The secret life and crimes behind Warren McCorriston's respectable business facade. I came across an article in the Weekend Australian that was published on September 4 last year, 2021. It is some interesting information about Warren McCorriston, a person of interest, that I have not covered before in my previous videos. This includes an alleged attempted abduction of a 10-year-old girl in early 1979. Hotel high flyer. Did he resort to murder? Inside story. David Murray, national crime correspondent. As temperatures rose and tourists descended on Surfers Paradise for the summer holidays in December 2019, the glittering skyline's most dominant high-rise was in the grip of a crisis. Owners and staff at gigantic Q1, home to more than 500 apartments, had been shocked to find it was at the epicentre of an intense investigation into the disappearance of two teenage girls in New South Wales 40 years prior. A special strike force set up to investigate the suspected murders of Amanda Robinson, 14, and Robyn Hickie, 18, had in its sights a seemingly unlikely new person of interest. Warren McCorriston, Q1's clean-cut body corporate general manager. McCorriston was a hospitality high-flyer who had been running the Daydream Island resort in the Whitsundays before returning to the Gold Coast to take up the position at Q1, his third stint at the landmark building. He also had a secret past, having served time in jail in at least 2 states decades earlier. Police believed that behind McCorriston's respectable all-business facade was a violent and dangerous sexual predator. They were investigating him for not only the disappearance of Robinson and Hickie, but for a string of sex assaults allegedly committed over the course of decades. Some victims were people well known to him. Others, women he allegedly terrorised after they met on Seeking Arrangement, a matchmaking site for sugar daddies and sugar babies. One woman, tragically, would take her own life, the Weekend Australian can reveal. So that's the first time I've heard of that. I haven't seen it mentioned elsewhere, so don't know the details behind that. But anyway, I'll continue. Gathering evidence and ratcheting up the pressure, detectives approached McCorriston's employers on the Gold Coast and requested CCTV footage and details of his whereabouts and movements. Veteran hospitality figure John Wilder, a Q1 colleague, says police disclosed 2 missing teenage girls were at the heart of their inquiries, and that there were some issues and concerns in New South Wales and Queensland. Measures were put in place to ensure women working on the site were not left alone with McCorriston, who had become well aware of the police attention and appeared to be unravelling. In probably the last 3 or 4 days before his arrest, he actually was living in the body corporate office, Wilder says. Now, I do remember reading, and probably mentioned in some of my earlier videos, that the relationship with his partner had broken down and he apparently wasn't handling it very well. So that may be a factor there. He was probably kicked out of his home. But anyway, I'm making some assumptions there. We sighted him on CCTV cameras going out to use the showers, which are over in the gymnasium. Then, when you track it back, he was going back to the caretaker's office and didn't reappear until the next morning. Wilder and former workmates from Daydream Island, speaking publicly about McCorriston for the first time, variously describe him as aloof, dictatorial, harsh, and narcissistic. So, seems he wasn't well liked. But anyway, had a bit of a dark side to him by the sounds of that, or at least that's what his colleagues seem to be saying, according to the Australian. Those contacted by the Weekend Australian were unaware of sexual or violent behaviour towards staff or guests. So it seems that side of his personality wasn't openly apparent. However, 2 former Daydream colleagues remembered him bringing to the island a succession of much younger women. He always brought women there for dinner, lunch, and he used to just tell everybody it was his island. He'd actually say, "It's my island," recalls a former Daydream chef de partie who asked not to be named. Former Daydream executive chef Trenton Branham had a staff of about 30 when McCorriston was manager, and does not hesitate to describe it as the worst place he has ever worked. So, well, I was about to say this, but it says it next. It wasn't a pleasant, supportive, fulfilling work culture by any means, Brennan said. When I took over, the team was in absolute turmoil. I never saw anything untoward in his actions of that nature towards staff. He just wasn't a very nice person, especially if he didn't like you. It has long been suspected a serial predator abducted and murdered Hickie and Robinson, who vanished from the Lake Macquarie region within weeks of each other in April 1979. Suspects have included backpacker killer Ivan Milat, due to his presence in the area as a road worker. So I would add, yes, Ivan Milat was a serious candidate as a suspect, but as mentioned previously at the inquest in 2002, there were 6 persons of interest, so Warren McCorriston isn't the first one, and there have been others, so can't say that it's definitely a positive lead, but he hasn't been a suspect before and they've never found someone, so who knows? But I shall continue. Strike Force Arapaima was established by Lake Macquarie detectives in April 2019 to reinvestigate the disappearances. From its inception, McCorriston was a key person of interest. Who they were interested in was kept under wraps, but spilled into the public arena when the strike force pulled the trigger and had him arrested by Queensland counterparts at Q1 on January 8, 2020. He was charged with historic sexual assaults against 3 women in the New South Wales Hunter region between 1979 and 1997. The charges did not relate to Robinson and Hickie. Detective Sergeant Christy Faber, leading the investigation, was there to see him taken into custody. Initially facing 28 charges, McCorriston pleaded guilty to 5 offences involving serious sexual assault or common assault against all 3 women. A further 5 were taken into account at sentencing. In June this year, so this article was 2021, aged 60, he was jailed for 8.5 years with a non-parole period of 4.5 years. Arapaima's investigations are continuing and the focus has not turned away from the hospitality professional. Last month, $1 million rewards were offered for information on each of the Robinson and Hickie cases. Days later, Arapaima started excavating a former Lake Macquarie scout camp, Camp Canangra at Nordsworth, in search of the teens' remains. Among the ranks of former local scouts, Warren John McCorriston. School ties. Hickie, a dental nurse, was last seen at a bus stop on the Pacific Highway at Belmont North on Saturday, April 7, 1979. She was on her way to a pub to meet friends, and investigators believe that due to a previous incident in Queensland, she would not have hitchhiked and would have only gone into a car with someone she knew. Someone, perhaps such as local boy McCorriston, who was about to turn 18 when she went missing. Police facts provided to court say McCorriston grew up in the Lake Macquarie area and lived with his family in Livingston Street, Belmont, until 1980. He is understood to have been in the year below Hickie at Belmont High School, and that's been confirmed elsewhere. A fortnight after Hickie's disappearance, Robinson vanished while walking home along Lake Road at Swansea. It was Saturday, April 21, 1979, and she had just attended a dance at her local high school. Robinson's mother, Anne, only let her go to the dance because she had arranged a lift home with a friend. In a devastating twist of fate, the schoolgirl missed her ride and caught a bus instead. Now, in my earlier videos, I was covering the newspaper reports at the time of her disappearance, and in those, and I think other information, she didn't actually miss the lift. It said that she wanted to stay longer and told them she'd catch a bus later. So, yeah. Either way, she didn't get the lift and caught a bus instead. She stepped off the bus just a few hundred metres from home and was never seen again. New South Wales State Coroner John Abernathy found in 2002 that the 2 teenagers, along with uni student Leanne Goodall, 20, who vanished after leaving the Star Hotel in Newcastle in December 1978, were abducted and murdered. Now, in my last video, I pointed out again the issue of bus stops, that there seemed to be some connection with these disappearances and bus stops. And Leanne Goodall's last confirmed sighting was when she said she was going to go to the bus stop and catch a bus home to Belmont and at her mother's place, which is also 2 streets away from where Warren McCorriston was living at the time. So that is probably another reason they're looking at Warren McCorriston. There seems to be a connection there as well. But it could all be just an odd coincidence. So nothing's confirmed there. Okay, so where are we at? So she vanished after leaving the Star Hotel in Newcastle in December 1978, were abducted and murdered. The coroner named 6 men, including Malat, as persons of interest. So I think I did say that a little earlier in this video. There were 6 persons of interest. McCorriston was not among them. So now you'd probably say there are 7 persons of interest. But I think Ivan Malat, from what I heard, used to get angry about being accused, and so I think his priority as the person of interest has dropped a lot, particularly since McCorriston came into the picture. But anyway, I'll continue. McCorriston was not among them, despite it now being apparent that police already had information that should have placed him on their radar. Escapes. On March 27, 1980, less than a year after Robinson and Hickie vanished, 18-year-old Linda Ray decided to hitchhike from Newcastle West Markets, which I'd say was probably the Pink Elephants markets, which were in the old store building, which was demolished a couple of years ago to build the train and tram interchange that they've built. But that's another controversial issue I won't go into now. So she was decided to hitchhike from the Newcastle West Markets, north of Lake Macquarie. To her home in nearby Merriweather. She was picked up by a car driven by a young man who immediately grabbed her by the wrist. She said in a recent interview with the Newcastle News, "You have got in with the wrong one now, baby," the driver told her. Actually, that's not correct either. She said this time. And she said that in the earlier newspaper reports and on the NBN.
He just grabbed me and he said, "You got in with the wrong one this time, baby." And they're words I will never forget.
She has been very consistent in her story over the years, but as you'll see, we can still only call it an alleged offence because he wasn't convicted. So whether that's a misquote seems to be similar to what was said in the Telegraph at some time, but anyway, the driver told her, well, that's the Newcastle News, which comes from the Telegraph, so yes, I'd say that's being quoted from there. Failing to turn off to her home, the driver continued towards the Glenrock Scout Camp at Whitebridge. On the side of the dirt track that was Scout Camp Road, he then dragged her to the back seat and ripped off her clothes. Seeing headlights approaching, she wrestled herself free and fled naked to the safety of the other car. She credits its occupants as a young couple with saving her life. Ray went to police, made a statement, and less than 4 weeks later, detectives arrested and charged McCorriston, then aged 18. He faced trial in the Newcastle District Court in August 1981, but was acquitted. That alleged incident had happened within 20 kilometres of the last known locations of Hickie and Robinson. About 15 months before, in early 1979, a 10-year-old girl was riding a bike in Blacksmith's Beach. I would have said on or at, maybe, but in seems a bit odd. But anyway, in Lake Macquarie, when a man allegedly driving a green Holden Torana crossed onto the wrong side of the road and cut her off. "Get in the effing car," the driver demanded. I have a feeling he didn't say effing, something else. Dropping her bicycle, the girl ran to a home where a man was mowing the lawn. She was crying and hysterical and saw the driver speed off. Police facts allege she informed her parents at the time and had repeatedly recounted the story to family and friends over the past 4 decades, always describing the same car. Police allege that in 1979, McCorriston drove a green Holden Torana sedan. So now we know why that is a significant factor in investigations, and they're trying to find that particular vehicle. But given that they've been trying for 2 years and we've heard nothing, I'd say that's a long shot now. It was probably a long shot then, really. But anyway, 40 years later, in November 2019, Arapaima released images of the same distinctive vehicle. Their appeal for information was seen by the woman, who contacted the strike force and detailed the terrifying incident from her childhood, describing the car and driver. Last January, she then saw a historical photograph of McCorriston on an NBN News Facebook post and was certain the driver was the man in the image. McCorriston was subsequently charged with her attempted abduction, but the New South Wales Director of Public Prosecutions did not proceed. Despite her repeating her story over many years, prosecutors believed the Facebook identification had complicated the case. So, this is also an alleged abduction. He was charged, but because they didn't think it would be successful, it was dropped and didn't make it to court. Probably feeling the evidence had been contaminated, and I guess with the time that had passed, it may have been difficult to prove. But anyway, the assaults McCorriston was convicted of against the 3 women in the Hunter region followed a similar pattern. With 2 of the women, police facts allege he would pin them down, tear off their clothes and rape them. He would repeatedly punch their head and body. He would explode with no warning and for no reason. He would hold their necks and squeeze until they could not breathe. He would control, dominate and isolate them. The 3rd woman worked at a real estate agency in Lake Macquarie. In about early January 1980, she had caught a train into the Newcastle area to catch up with friends. As she walked down the street, McCorriston repeatedly drove past her in a brown Datsun Sunny, then approached her from behind and grabbed her shoulders, aggressively offering her a lift. When she tried to flag down a passing police car, he held her arms behind her back, then demanded her name and phone number to let her go. She gave him false ones and ran off, so not stupid there. A few weeks later, around Valentine's Day, she was stunned when he turned up at her office, delivering a single red rose. On a raffle ticket, he wrote down his full name and his address in Livingston Street, Belmont. So maybe he was a bit deluded there, I don't know, but very confident. Later he phoned her and said he knew where she lived, describing her house, yard and dog. The calls continued for weeks. Disturbingly, he would say he knew what she had been doing. Her father resorted to putting a whistle near the phone and would blow it when he called. Friends of the woman spotted McCorriston watching her in a mall and across from her home. Then one day when she was swimming at Redhead Beach, she was grabbed from behind in a bear hug. Expecting to see a friend, she turned and found it was McCorriston, her swimmer top coming undone as she struggled to get free. Not long after, she saw McCorriston's name in the paper for alleged abduction and assault of hitchhiker Linda Ray, and went to Belmont Police Station and told a detective what happened. More than 20 years later, in 2002, she saw New South Wales Police Strike Force Fenwick were investigating Robinson and Hickie's disappearances, and she again contacted police and lodged a report. Now, I'm wondering if it was actually 2002, because Strike Force Fenwick hit the media with their investigations in 1998. I don't know how long it went on for, but 2002 was when the inquest into the disappearances occurred, so might be some confusion with the dates there, but anyway, I'll continue. No further investigations were completed, the police facts reveal. So she reported it in 1980 or 81 when Linda Ray's case hit the media, but it seems police probably didn't take it seriously then, and maybe Strike Force Fenwick didn't either, because it didn't seem directly relevant, and McCorriston wasn't on the radar then, so I am a bit worried that if it wasn't Warren McCorriston, maybe they are too focused on him and need to be a bit more open-minded to other possibilities, but they have more information than I do, so hopefully they're on the right track with whatever they're doing. New South Wales District Court Judge Mark Marion said the offences were extreme and unprovoked, involving a repeated pattern of sexual assault. McCorriston stood up in court and offered my most humble apology to the women. I regret my actions, he told the court. I'm remorseful. They did not deserve to be treated in such a manner. Whether he's genuine in that, couldn't say. From what I remember, looking at the reports in June last year when he was convicted, I think the judge did consider it was genuine, but only he, Warren McCorriston, would know for certain. It is understood he has previously been in jail in both New South Wales and Queensland for charges related to car theft and fraud. Now, I have not read that or heard that anywhere before, and I did try searching for any information on it. I could not find anything. So I can only assume, because they're publishing that they have found it somewhere. But the details of it, I don't know. Anyway, continuing. Unfair dismissal. Now, I have found a fair bit of information on this, including the determination of what I'm about to read. So I might put a link in the description below. Anyway, I shall read. Remarkably, after his arrest for the historic sex assaults, McCorriston fought his dismissal from Q1 from behind bars. He lost his case in the Fair Work Commission in April on a technicality. He had not served the minimum employment period to be eligible to take action. And that's basically what I read. It was something to do with determining whether the body corporate was a small business or not, and that determined the time period, which it seemed had to be 12 months, but he'd only been working in the position for 11 months and 4 days, I believe. Okay, former Q1 colleague Wilder reveals the body corporate is investigating two potentially fraudulent double payments totaling about $140,000 for refurbishments that were overseen by McCorriston. Now, in my last video, I did mention that McCorriston appeared at Southport Court, or probably not in person, but his case was heard on the 8th of February this year, 2022. Now, I have no idea what it's in relation to, but I'm thinking maybe something has come from this, which this article was September 2021. I don't know for sure, so I can't confirm that, so it's only a possibility. But obviously there's something else happening. He is upfront about clashing with McCorriston professionally before his arrest, but still cannot reconcile his offences with the man who would wander the 77 floors looking for problems. So it seems hard to believe that anyone could possibly commit these crimes, even though he didn't like him. But anyway, it was all nitpicking. It was like, the pool water's cloudy, Wilder said. With police calling for more potential victims to come forward, his days of flying under the radar are now over. So it seems police believe, yep, there are more victims. There may not be, but yeah, I think if anything, if anyone knows anything about the disappearances or any offences that Warren McCorriston or anyone else mentioned may have committed, perhaps come forward and might alleviate the pain and suffering of family and friends. But yes, it's a bit of a mystery. Yeah, so we have Warren McCorriston here, convicted of a number of violent crimes, acquitted of other crimes. From this article, it seems he has had jail time before, but nothing related to violence. Appears to be something to do with car theft and fraud. Haven't heard that before, so won't confirm that. But yeah, I think his business career is pretty much over. I was thinking though, if he had been in jail before, you think these high profile places would be aware of that, but I suppose they probably thought everyone deserves a second chance, if they did know. Yes, but if police had looked into the alleged allegations of the 10-year-old girl, describing the green Torana and knowing that McCorriston had a green Torana at the time, it may not have stopped the disappearances, but they might have been able to make a better connection at the time, particularly if they'd investigated more thoroughly and checked at the bowling club that night that Amanda would have been walking past there. Maybe they did, but it seems that investigations were very trivial at the time, and there would have been a lot of other people who may have known information or provided information with a lot clearer memories, but there's probably a lot of people who would have had some information that would have been connected who probably long dead by now. It was over 40 years ago. Anyway, I'll leave it there. If you'd like to watch more of my videos, please subscribe and click on the notification bell. I'm David A. Elliott. Have a good one and see you around like a ristle.